Hello everyone and welcome back to this step-by-step tutorial on Microsoft Access. We're now going to look at adding a form to our database so that we can input data more effectively. I'm going to show you a step-by-step guide on how to do this. But first what you want to do is you want to close your current table down by right-clicking and then closing. All that does is just takes it back down into the toolbar to the left hand side so you haven't lost it at all. Then you want to go over and click on the create function. Now we've currently got this table selected, however if we didn't have this table selected, this function up here, which is a form function, would be disabled. So we just click on that, it populates this already pre-made form for us. Now from the example we can see here this is obviously the first student in our database, which obviously is the data that you have chosen. For this example, this is me. And we can see here that obviously it's given the field names. And then we've got some input boxes here that we can manipulate if we do wish. And we'll show an example of that in a second. At the bottom here, we've got some arrows that we can go to the next record. And we can see additional students available within the database. Now, if you were to click this one which says blank record, which is the third arrow along, that brings up a new blank form. And we can start to look at inputting data in here. However, we're currently in the layout view. So if we change to the form view, so again, you can use the box up here, or you can do right click form view. And this takes you to the Form View tab where you're able to input data. So if we input another student, so this one we're going to call this maybe Katie Price. And we could say that she lives at number 5 street name. She's going to live in Bournemouth. And also city will be Bournemouth as well. Her postcode, we're going to put her as BH2, and then we're going to put 2AB, and then we're going to add her date of birth. Again, you can also input this manually, or you can go and select her date of birth using the selector. I'm going to put today's date just to make it easier for this current video. So that's all the data inputted. However, we need to make sure that this is saved to the database. So if we go down and click on the same button we did before, add new record. And then it populates that into the database. And as we can see here, we've now got a new blank form. However, we want to see if that data has actually saved to our chosen table. So what we're going to do is we're just going to save the student details form. So if you want to click on the tab and click save and give this an appropriate name. So I'm going to call this maybe enrollment, as obviously we'll be enrolling students onto the student details, and then click OK. On the left hand side bar we can see that we've now got a form list. This list will include all the forms that you have available within your chosen database. And what we want to do is we just want to close that for a second and then just bring up the student details table by double clicking on it. And as we can see here, that extra student has now been added to our database, which is brilliant. So we can now edit the data within our field view, or we can go back and edit the data in our forms by clicking the form enrollment, and then we chose the chosen student that you would like to edit. So say for example Jacob, we want to say that he lives at number 3. We can just change the data there and then continue on to the next student. And then if we go and right click and save, if we go back, we can see that now Jacob's record for the number has changed to 3. However, we can also make a form in an additional way. So if we go back onto Student Details Table tab, clicking here in the column, the navigational column, we click Create, there's additional functions that we can use. So if we go on to blank form, this brings up a blank form page. Now, as we can see here in the ribbon, we have lots of different tabs available to us. So if we look at the design function, this is what you'll be using to design your chosen form. We can have the ability to input data, so that's obviously a text box. We have the ability to add labels or a title. We have the ability to add a button, a folder, a hyperlink. We've even got the ability to have in-depth web browser controls, and so on and so forth. You can even add photos if you do wish. And then if you want to make it more personalized, you can add a title, logo, and date and time. On the arrange, you can obviously arrange this in the way that you would like. So potentially you might want it that it's centered into the middle or centered down from the top. And if we click on format, then that gives you the format functions to be able to change the text, the size of the text, the layout, etc., etc. Okay, so while we're in this blank form, you can change the view if you would wish. So you can go over here, or you can right click again and go into different formats. So if we look at the form view at the moment, that's the ability to input data, just like we have for the enrollment, is currently blank. So if we right click that one again and go into design view, this brings out a very similar view to what we've just realized and seen, but it comes with a grid. And this grid helps us when we're designing our chosen form so that we can try and get everything nice and lined up. If we go click on the design tab, now we can automatically add elements in here. So if we just click on the label and say draw a box, and we can maybe call this enrollment. At the top there, obviously it will say enrollment. We can then highlight that and go back into format, and we can change to say, oh, I want that bold, I want it centered into the middle of that box, and I want it a lot bigger. And you know what? I'm going to put that in the center of the format page. So let's put it there. So that's sort of mid-center. We go back onto design. We can input our own text if we wanted to. So if we wanted to get the user to input text, we can use this text box. However, we already have pre-made fields which we're going to be using. So over here, we can see a box which has already been clicked for my example. If you click that, it brings up this field list. These are all the fields that you currently have available within your tables. So if you click show all tables, it'll give you a drop-down menu. So if you click on student details, it'll drop down all the current fields available within that table. So if you just double click on student name, it will appear on your form for you to move around the page. If you move one box, it will move the other because they're both connected to each other. So let's put that sort of in the middle. And you can add as many fields as you like. So this one, potentially you could just add student name, student number, and student's last name. And you could potentially class this as maybe a lookup or a search form. And if you're happy with that, we can then just go over here and then save. And you could probably save this as an appropriate name. So we could potentially go search. Okay. And you'll see that appears under the form search. If we then go over and change this to form view, we can see here that that is what it looks like in a form view. And obviously, again, you can then change the text within the text box as you do wish, and then obviously go back up to the top, make sure you save it. If you go back to student details, any updates that you would have done would now appear here in the student details table. So that's two ways that we can add a form. Either way is acceptable. Either way allows you to add data, manipulate data, delete data. If you go back onto create again, there is also an ability to form a wizard. So I'm just going to close the current forms down so that it helps us out a little bit more, and just have it make sure that the area is blank. If you click on this form wizard, This wizard will bring you a step-by-step guide on creating a chosen form if you do not wish to use the form design or the blank form design. Here's all the lists of available in our current table, so we can see here that that's all the chosen field names that we have. So on student name, if you want to click this button, it will select that field. So we want to include that chosen field in our form. And you can include as many as you like. So potentially we could just include student number, first name, last name, and date of birth. And then click next. We can then choose how we want this to look. So we can do maybe a Commoner version or a data sheet file or justified. If for the time being, we're just going to do a column, then click next. You want to give this title to this form. So you could call this one enrollment example. And then you want to just open the form because we're not going to really modify this design. So let's just click finish. And there we go. So that brings up another form for us to use. And that's another example if you want a more simpler way to create a form for your user requirements. Join me in the next episode, which we'll be looking at querying set data.